Well, one of the things I love about being a pastor in this generation is that I find various churches, work together better more than ever before. Maybe it's just my memory, but I think when I was a kid, I had this imagination that churches competed with one another, and maybe they did. But some of my best friends in the region are pastors of other churches, and it's so fascinating to me to think about how we can kind of encourage one another and share resources and organize efforts. And we're actually getting ready next month to do a message series that's going to be shared by over 700 churches all around Chicagoland, and I think dozens here in Northwest Indiana. And we're going to work together and try not to duplicate our efforts with one another. That idea of sharing resources is huge for us. And of course, it doesn't just happen locally here. These days, the way we put messages together and work on everything, we're sharing conversations with pastors all across the country all the time. Just last week, I was in Indianapolis at one of the new churches Suncrest started down there, and I looked up on the board while I was in this meeting, and I saw a card up there. It looked really familiar, and I asked Justin about it, their pastor, and he said, yeah, we did that series. I said, well, it looks familiar. It looks like you used our graphics and our video and probably my message outlines and definitely the commitment card that we had. He's like, yeah, that's exactly what we did. This is how it works these days. We share these resources all the time, and you should never expect if you hear something from me that it's completely original with me, because pastors love doing this. But I've actually kind of gotten more comfortable, I guess, acknowledging that, because I remember in my very early years of ministry, when Suncrest was still so new that we were meeting at Lake Central High School, I had an experience that I'll never forget. So here's what happened. I was preaching a message one morning, and I had been looking for hey, what's the right way to open this message? What's the right illustration or way to approach this? And I had found a resource from another pastor. I didn't give him credit at all. I just used it as if it was my own. And I opened my message with that illustration. I thought, oh, this is a knockout illustration. This is going to have people's attention. We're on the right path. It was great. It was great. About a month later, we had a guest speaker at Suncrest. And I was sitting in the audience while he began his message. And he starts to begin his message with the exact same illustration that I had used just a month before. And I thought to myself, I sat there, as he starts to go through it, I thought, he's going to use this exactly the same way I used it. And I just started shrinking down in my seat. And I remember thinking for the rest of his message, I can't remember a thing that he said. I just thought, you know what, after this service is done, I'm going to go out into the little commons area that we have there, and people are going to come up to me, and they're either going to kind of jokingly give me a hard time that we're copying each other's messages, or maybe they're actually going to be upset that I don't know. So I just kind of prepared myself for that. I walked out into the commons area, and you know what? Nobody said a thing. And at first I was a little bit relieved. I thought, all right, I made it through. And then after a little while, I got a little frustrated. You do remember that I used that illustration just a month ago, right? You do remember my sermons word for word and implement them completely into your lives, right? I put a lot of work into these things. So I was thinking about that this week because I was preparing for this message in our Best Christmas Ever series. Now, if you've been here over the last few weeks, we're taking a look and saying, how could we make this Christmas the best Christmas ever? And we know the answer to that has a relational element, because the thing that makes anything the best ever is who you share it with, and then how you share it. You have to push the envelope a little bit. And I don't know if you've picked up on this. I wouldn't expect you to necessarily, but there are some well-established principles of relationships. And there's actually a book that was written a number of years ago that I love. I share with people all the time. It's called The 5 Love Languages. And we can really learn how to give and receive love and how someone would like to receive love if we just think about a few categories in our minds. And so what I've done with this series, though I didn't announce it at the front end, was I took some of these relational principles and I said, what if we did this at Christmas to make our relationships better, and it could be the best Christmas ever? So we did gift giving. That's one of them. We did quality time last week. That's one of them. One of them is physical affection, physical touch. We're not doing that, just so you know, this Christmas. Although, if I was going to take 1 minute, I would say this. If your mom or your dad just longs for a hug from you, if your brother or sister or son or daughter or whoever, if a hug would mean the world to them, but you're not a hugger? Hug them this Christmas. Like, it really matters when someone longs for that physical affection and they actually receive it. All right, that's physical affection. Another way to express love is words of affirmation. To actually speak words of honor to someone and name something about them or something they've done, note it and encourage it and say it. But here's my problem. When we were working on this message, we always do this a few months in advance, I realized I had just preached this message back in August. Like, we were going through the book of Acts, and you remember the Paul made a stop with the Ephesian elders. I'm sure you remember this, right? I used this quote. You remember this quote? It's from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I told you all kinds of stories about my dad, and I picked up a book off this piano right here, and I read something that he had given me a book, but he had written in the front cover. And I told you that I had two grandfathers, and they were both fine, but one of them just kind of made me feel like super special. I told you that my cousin was the mayor now of my hometown, and at the end of the message, one of our teenagers came out here and he told the story. You remember this sermon? Yep. Oh yeah, good. Well, I'm going to preach it all over again. That's what's, and I seriously am actually going to do that, and here's why. My sense is, at the end of that message, I asked all of you to make sure that you paused briefly 7 times that week, 1 time each day, to express words of affirmation of honor to someone, and to make a point that in the next month, you would go out of your way to share a meal or an experience or travel to visit someone so that someone who is very special in your life, that they knew that. And I'm sure that some of you took me up on that. Most people probably took me up on that partially. That's how it works most of the time. You wanted to do the whole thing, but then, life happens. Some of you had good intentions of doing it and didn't actually do it. And some of you weren't even here at all. And so I thought, absolutely, I can do that this Christmas. Because in this season, over the next 2 weeks, if you employ speaking words of honor to people who matter to you, this could be the best Christmas ever. See, I don't know how it feels at your house. Like, homes, like, they literally have feels to them, don't they? Some homes, you feel like you're walking on eggshells all the time. You feel like it's an environment that's mostly marked by critique and criticism. That's how most of the conversation goes in a home. Some of you live in homes like that. Within every home, within some homes, there's not so much critique as there is boredom. People don't actually speak to one another in any meaningful ways at all. And then some of you are fortunate enough that the roof that you live under, like the group of people that live under that roof, you actually speak encouragement to one another. You speak honor. And I can promise you, your life is way better than the people who live under roofs where the mantra is critique all of the time. Because how people make you feel really matters. If you were to think about your parents, you could probably think about how you make them feel and how they make you feel. If you were to think about your children, even your adult children who don't live under your roof anymore, you could probably think about how you make them feel and how they make you feel. You can think about your work environment. Some of you have best friends at work, some of you have laughter, some of your work environments are marked with making you feel great, and others are just marked with criticism and critique, and it's never good enough. Boredom. And what I'm telling you today is that in as much as you have power to influence those environments and those relationships, you should absolutely use it. See, I always think, I have such a weird, unique job. Not weird, maybe weird, definitely unique. And some of you have public jobs, kind of like my job is public. Some of you have jobs where like leadership is the whole job. You're always trying to move things forward. It's like your job to create the next steps and the change and to move things forward. And anytime you have a job that's public or a leadership job, like you're not going to make everyone happy. And I feel like one of the very unique things about my role is that I get my share of critique and my share of criticism. I usually don't share that in messages. But right alongside of that critique and criticism, for whatever reason, God has blessed me with a group of people I get a wild amount of affirmation from in my life. And I think I couldn't make it if it was just the critique. But even when going into this last Thursday's service, I thought, this is really true. The way people make you feel really matters. In just the 24-hour window before our Thursday service this week, I received multiple messages of people that were very encouraging to me. I'm going to show a few of them to you. I just want you to think how this makes someone feel. I got this text from a friend. They said, I hope you know how much my family and I appreciate you. You are a tremendous blessing to us and to me, and we feel fortunate to be able to have such a wise, passionate, gifted, God-fearing pastor that speaks boldly into our lives. Wow, Mark Twain said, I can live for 2 months on a good compliment. And that's how that makes me feel. It's because of you, our faith has grown, our family. Thank you. We love you. That's awesome. That was Wednesday night. Thursday morning, I had the occasion to be on a video conference call with a young girl and her mom from Colombia, South America. A lot of you know we're starting 2 new churches in Colombia. And so this is all in a partnership with Compassion International, where we have the chance to do some child sponsorship. And so Jenny and I went ahead and sponsored a young girl who's in one of these churches in Colombia. And I got to do a video conference call with her and her mother. She's 7 years old. Her name is Tyree. This is actually her picture. Cute girl, isn't she? And here's the thing. We just signed up last month. So far we've given a grand total of $38. But we're going to do that every month, and it's going to provide health care and nutrition and education and spiritual development to hopefully lift just one person completely out of poverty and set her on the course in life where she knows God loves her, God is with her, and she has the tools she needs to succeed. And the moment we came onto this video conference call, she looked at me and she said, I love you. And she has this tears coming down her eyes, and she says, I wish we were together so I could hug you. And I just thought, my goodness, I haven't done anything yet, but she made me feel a certain way. This past week, there's an article in the Post-Tribune written, Jerry Davitt, he's a columnist. Jerry's a friend of mine. Sometimes I'll feed him storylines because he does like human interest stories. And sometimes he'll do a story and then find out later this was actually a Suncrest family that he did the story on, which is what happened this past week. We have a couple in our church who own a craft brewery in Valparaiso, and they do awesome work, do a lot of good in their community, honor veterans. It's so awesome. So he wrote a story about that. And when I saw the story came out, I just emailed this couple, Jason and Beth, and I said, hey, I'm just kind of cheering them on. I want to honor them. I want to say words of affirmation to say, hey, you're doing great. It was so good to see this story, right? And so I did that. I emailed them this with a link to the story. And then this is the reply I got from them. I said, thank you, Greg. All we do is to glorify him. You and our Suncrest home have been a huge influence as well. So thank you for guiding us. I mean, I know I'm showing you things that people said to me, but I'm telling you, that matters. The way it makes me feel is fuel for wanting to keep living that out and keep doing it and keep going in the midst of no matter what happens. Sometimes it's people in our lives that just make us feel a unique way. This is a picture of my Uncle Bill. I think everyone should have like a favorite awesome uncle. My Uncle Bill is kind of unique because my dad was the oldest in his family. Bill is his brother, but Bill was the youngest in his family. And so my Uncle Bill was actually closer in age to me than he was to my dad. And he was the cool uncle when we were growing up. I mean, I could give you so many pictures of this, and everyone that I think of comes back to him taking time for me. My parents, they had a Lincoln Town Car with an 8-track player in it. My Uncle Bill had a Toyota Celica with this brand new thing called a cassette player in it. And he would take me for rides in his Celica. And Like, I thought I was $1 million. My Uncle Bill went off to the University of Illinois, and he actually became Chief Illiniwek. He would do the dances at halftime of football games and basketball games. And when we would go and watch him dance, then afterwards he'd say, "Hey, Greg, why don't you come down into the locker room with me afterwards?" And he would introduce me to people and players. And I thought, oh my goodness, how awesome is this guy? He's a pilot for Delta Airlines now, but just when he was getting out of college, he wasn't a commercial pilot yet, but he had got his pilot license. And there was one Thanksgiving where my great-grandmother, who lived near Omaha, Nebraska, was very ill. And so we decided on Thanksgiving Day that my Uncle Bill and my dad and my older brother and he had access to a little 4-seat airplane. And we would fly to Omaha, visit my great-grandmother, and fly home the same day. And my Uncle Bill invited me to sit in the co-pilot's seat, and he let me take off and land. At least that's what he told me. And you can probably imagine, for a 10-year-old kid, my goodness, he made me feel like $1 million. These days when I fly, whenever I'm flying Delta, I always text him the day of my flight just to see if he might be my pilot on my flight. Hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen one day. I think that guy, like, he made me feel like $1 million. And you and I don't just want to yearn, hoping we have an awesome uncle. We have the chance to be the awesome uncle, the fantastic aunt, the person who values someone else and makes them feel special. And it will shape their lives. And so I want us to think just a little bit about this, especially in light of Christmas. We see these kind of things come up in a Christmas storyline, even in the scriptures all the time. So I'm going to pull a few verses from both Matthew's account and Luke's account of the birth of Jesus. Follow this with me. Matthew chapter 1, verse 19. But because Joseph, Mary's husband, was faithful to the law, and yet did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. Do you remember the circumstances of this? His girlfriend, fiancée, betrothed, was pregnant. And it wasn't his. And he had to think, how am I going to handle that? And this is such a powerful principle, because sometimes we think of words of affirmation being so strong. I have to think of something to say at just the right moment, and you should try to do that. But sometimes the best way to show honor to someone is when there's a potentially embarrassing situation and you just provide cover for it. It's going to happen at one of your Christmas gatherings this year. Someone's going to say something, something's going to be said, someone's going to do something, and it's going to be potentially embarrassing right there in the moment. And you have the chance to actually provide cover for it, to make sure someone doesn't live in the shame or the embarrassment of a situation. And if you do that for somebody, it really, really matters. Later on in the story, the wise men, the magi, are coming to honor this king, baby Jesus. And they stop at Herod's palace on the way. Herod's the king. And it's such an interesting exchange. This is what Herod says to them. It says, he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." Now, did Herod really want to go and worship him? No. If you know this story, Herod actually wanted to kill him. But Herod, now, we got to be careful about this. Herod was using flattery because of something he actually wanted. And whenever we think about giving words of affirmation, it's always good to kind of test ourselves and say, it's about them, right? It's not ultimately about me. I'm not trying to get something from this, am I? Later on, those wise men would make their way to the house. This was now years after Jesus was born. And they go to the house where Mary is, and this is what it's described. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Now, here's what I'm pretty sure of. when you go to your Christmas gatherings, no matter what size or shape it is, there will probably be nobody there that's worth bowing down and worshiping. But you can just take it one step back and say, hey man, if they bowed down and worshiped, maybe with my mom or my brother or whoever was invited, maybe I should just sit down and honor them. What would that look like to sit down next to someone and speak words of honor to them? When Luke was describing in his account of the birth of Jesus, we get a little more detail about the situation. And one of the details he gives us is that the sky broke open and angels came and gave a message to shepherds. Now, shepherds were doing their work. They were in the middle of their job, watching their flocks at night. And here's how the result of that gets described. It says, so the shepherds hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. Essentially, these shepherds allowed their work to be interrupted. Even though they'd have to figure some other things out, they wanted to go and be present with the people who mattered to show honor. So powerful. At the very end of Luke's account, after the whole night is done and Mary's given birth and there's this celebration and the baby's in the manger, we get one fascinating sentence about Mary's reflective experience at the end. This is what it says. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. I think sometimes when I don't know what to do, I just try to picture, what do I want someone to feel afterwards? And then I'll try to go do whatever would make them feel that way. And I think you'll come off of some Christmas celebrations, and there are people who you love. It might be your sister. I don't know who it's going to be. But if at the end they kind of step back and they think back, oh, what happened over the last 24 hours or the last few days? And they want to ponder something in your heart. Maybe it's even your own mom. And she just gets to the end of Christmas and she wants to ponder something in her heart. Think, what experience am I leaving her with? What experience am I leaving him with? That she has a rich reflection at the end of our time together. And so I want to give you the exact same outline I gave you in August, so that you can think in uber practical ways about how to bring honor this Christmas. So think about this. As you go through life, maybe you can even say, as you go through Christmas, people will be placed in your path by God. I know that you and I are both prone to think that the people who cross our paths are placed there randomly, that there was no meaning behind that. But I'm suggesting to you that if we would step back and believe that God is sovereign and fully in control, that it's actually quite possible that when you sit down at Christmas dinner, the person who is sitting next to you is not an accident. Now, I always think it's so interesting to kind of watch the dynamic in a family gathering as people are getting their food for Christmas dinner, because there's always a limited number of people at the Christmas gathering who are getting recruited to sit next to them. You know how this works? This is actually how it was with my Uncle Bill at our family gathering. I would say, hey, Uncle Bill, will you sit next to me? And then I always kind of set that as a goal, like I want to be the uncle that my nieces and nephews will want me to sit with them. Now, maybe you've never been recruited. If you've never been recruited, I'm not shaming you, but it would be worth thinking like, hey, why not? Am I not the kind of person who expresses love and affirmation and helps people know how they would feel around me? Whether you're recruited or not, there will be someone on your right and someone on your left. It doesn't have to be during Christmas dinner. I mean, think about this. Not only will people be put in your path by God, but you will share experiences with them. Now, I don't know how gift opening goes at your family Christmases. I just have all these stories of how it works different ways in the families that I'm a part of. And we have one side of the family where gift giving takes about 35 seconds because everybody goes at once. It is the right way, but if you're wondering, that's the right way to do gift giving. There's another side of the family that opens them one by one so everyone can see, and like 3 hours later, we're finally done, right? So, if you happen to end up sitting next to somebody during the misery that is a long gift opening, what if God put that person next to you? What if you get the chance to lean over while you're both bored out of your gourd by what's going on in front of you, and you just ask them about their life? And when you ask them about their life, listen. And they might say something great is happening. They might be celebrating a new step, a new job, a new child, a new something. And you get the chance to look back at them when they say that. And here's the kind of phrase you should use. You should move it from an activity to an identity. And you should say, you know what, I'm not surprised by that because you're the kind of person who, and you name that back to them. Those are words of affirmation. Or maybe someone in that side conversation is going to come to you and say, man, it's been a tough year. Man, we're facing this, or I'm getting divorced. I don't know. Like, these things come up, right? But when someone says that to you, then you have an opportunity in that moment to say, what am I going to say back to them? And you have the chance to say, you know what? I know about you. You're a strong enough person. You're a fair enough person. You're a great dad. You're going to be able to weather this storm. And somebody needs to hear that this Christmas, and they need to hear it from you. Because words of affirmation, when you share experiences together, are powerful. So if you would just do this, honor them with a pause. Pause long enough in the midst of the frenzied pace this Christmas and just speak words of affirmation to the people God has placed in your path. How do we pause? I'm going to give you the practical framework. Let me say this first. Some people never pause. Some people never pause. And it isn't necessarily because you're ungrateful. But I don't know if you've ever thought about this. I try to say this over and over again. You could actually be grateful for someone. You could feel it in your heart and think it in your mind. But if it never gets expressed out of your lips, I don't know if you know this, but unexpressed gratitude communicates something. It communicates ingratitude. It communicates that you're ungrateful. Like, you actually could feel it inside and you could think it in your mind, but if you don't say it out loud, the person on the receiving end not only doesn't hear it, they hear something else. They hear that you're ungrateful for them. And so to take the time to pause, so powerful. There are different degrees, and I like to make this super simple, so I just put them in kind of time frames for this. But all of us can do this. We can make an ordinary pause. These ordinary pauses are very brief. They last 1 to 5 seconds. I think that's the right way to think about it. And if you stop and think just for a little bit, like, man, I just want to do what's ordinary. I don't want to be the person who never says thank you or is never grateful. Some of you send Christmas cards. Some of you don't. Some of you send 20 Christmas cards. Some of you send 200 Christmas cards. Some of you send Christmas cards, and like, you don't ever write anything at all. It's just a picture and the envelope on the stamp and go, right? I want to tell you, I think that's awesome. I do. Because it's just an ordinary pause. It's something a lot of people don't do. And at least something comes through the mailbox, and you see a picture of a face. I don't know about you, but we get these pictures, and we put them up on our wall, and we pray for these people as they come. We get Christmas cards from them. Like, it's not everything, but it's something. To mark a simple occasion, to just give somebody a hug and say Merry Christmas, like, it's ordinary, but it does matter. Because if you don't do it, that matters. Then you can take it kind of to the next level, and put this in the frame of 1 to 5 minutes. This is a meaningful pause. It's not just an ordinary pause. This is where I encourage people to to kind of turn and face someone in a conversation. Maybe when you're saying goodbye this Christmas, you say, you know what, I'm going to take the time to put my hand on someone's shoulders and look them in the eye and say something to them. A couple of holidays ago, Christmases ago, I started to think about this. My dad passed away 3 years ago, and that's a missing element in my life. And then it started to hit me, I have great in-laws. I'd never really taken the time for rich or deep conversations. My father-in-law's personality is that I kind of just like to give him a hard time, and he gives me a hard time. And if I can beat him at the card game at Christmas, then I rub it in his face. That's kind of the relationship that we have. And I started thinking just on the way home from Christmas, 2 Christmases ago, I thought, you know what? That guy, he carries a lot of weight. He's got not just Jenny, but 2 other kids. And man, if I think about all the times that he's been there for us, all the projects that he's led in fixing up our houses and taking care of us and providing for us, even while we were adults. If I think about the ways that he holds a family together now that his parents are gone and serves as the patriarch of a family, I thought, I wonder if anyone ever tells him thank you for that. Because I really haven't. And then I didn't know what to do, right? Because this is awkward. He's my father-in-law. We don't talk about things like this. But life is on the other side of awkward. And so I'll tell you what I did. I texted him. It was kind of weak. It's kind of a weak way out just to text somebody. It was all I could do at that time. And I sent him a text. It was 3 sentences long. But I just said, hey, I just want you to know we do appreciate your role in our family. What you do for all of your kids and your nieces and nephews, it really matters. And I got the nicest, most meaningful text back from him that I've ever had in my life. That's what this is. It didn't take long. It was 1 to 5 minutes. But if you'll stop and think and mark, it really matters. And maybe just for one person this holiday, you could do something memorable. This is a longer pause. This is 1 to 5 hours. This is going out of your way to take someone to dinner or to breakfast or to go visit them out of town. Honestly, everybody needs this. And last Christmas, after kind of a really chaotic year, and of course a chaotic season for me, we were at my in-laws, and it just hit me. I thought, you know what? While we're here, we have built-in people to watch our kids. Jenny is the one who pays the price a lot of times for my life and my schedule. How about while we're here, just Jenny and I get away for a night? So she knows I appreciate her. Listen, I'm just telling you, you have more power than you think you have. You have the ability to make people feel a certain way. And people might forget the words that you said or the things that you did, but they will not forget how you make them feel. And this Christmas, if you would express words of honor, words of affirmation, pause to mark these things. It really matters. So that's the assignment. Here's the assignment. Establish pausing for honor as a habit this Christmas. Not once and done, although that is the right place to start, is just to do it once, try it out, test it out, see how it feels. But then to establish it as a habit. And then here's the thing. Best Christmas ever? When these words come out of your mouth to someone else, I think the initial way to think is, maybe that will make it the best Christmas ever for them. And maybe it will. But this is the currency of giving, no matter what it is that you're giving. Affirmation, appreciation, affection, gifts. When you get to give to someone and you see it matter to them, it actually makes it the best Christmas ever for us. I want to pray you experience that this Christmas. God, thanks for your goodness, and I pray that we see the divine occasions that are in front of us. God, whether it's someone who desperately needs a word of encouragement, and you use us, or whether it's someone who you just place them in our path and we get to speak life and identity and encouragement to them. Give us whatever it takes, God. The thoughtfulness, the boldness, the awareness, the words. In Jesus' name.